I'm just wondering if you may have found it at all problematic referring or using the ideas of cultural capital from here or you, because from my recollection of, or my understanding of what he's saying, is that people actually exist within a pretty restrictive habitus or social field, and that people, that actually drives a process of social reproduction. People find it very difficult to escape their social milieu, and you're saying that the people in your study are, obviously, they are equipped with certain characteristics that, and so I'm just wondering if you're finding that there's some disconnect between the theory of cultural capital and what you're finding.
You're absolutely right. Bourdieu was using it to describe class and replication within French society. And I'm just reading a book on transnational entrepreneurs, where the ones I mentioned of Silicon Valley, are going back to India, and the whole preface of that particular book is using Bourdieu's idea of cultural capital and habitus, and talking about how that can be applied. So other people have also extended, I mean, that's how he applied it to that class situation. And I think I still have to make the case, but I think it's being increasingly made. The way, and of course he also defines cultural capital in 3 ways. I only picked up embodied beliefs. For this one, I have the others and So, because institutional capital becomes what we call human capital. His idea of cultural is what I've called under the definition of human capital. So there's a crossover there.
I think it does also say in his own life as a demonstration that there are some people who they are equipped with something. I mean, he was from quite humble origins himself, but obviously escaped us. Yeah, so there's probably potential reason to say that he was acknowledging,
Yes. All around this word capital is a fascinating area. So the literature is just starting to move and pick some of this, but a challenge is defining his definition of a cultural capital, because he also defines human capital, the qualifications a person gets. And he puts that under cultural capital, which is true too. But then it's been further taken out by other definitions. So this idea of capital is interesting. Yeah, that's why there's a question of capital.
Thanks, Prue. I think that since we started, we're on a huge appreciation for both Joss's and your research, because now I know what it is that you're doing and how you're doing it, and you become multi-dimensional to me. But the question I wanted to ask was more on research methods. So what kind of questions did you ask? Because you had a semi-structured interview approach to identify these cultural capital elements in your entrepreneurs.
I didn't look for anything like cultural capital when I did. I was focusing on social capital and human capital. So I was looking for what's your background, what's your, what are your network, what were your contacts, what did you know, and only when I'm reading the transcripts do the words like determined, I didn't give up, I'm an optimistic person, I hate negative people, I love solving problems. Solving problems is what I do. These words came out, and I'm thinking, but this is different. And what makes these people different from others? Is this significant or not? So I didn't ask any questions. It's emerged from the transcripts.
Right, yeah, that's very interesting, because it might be actually revisiting some of these people and
what I really love to do, I mean, everything of course is under confidentiality. I have to sign my name in blood to the Department of Labour not to publish anything. But most of these people say, I don't mind, I'd love, they're quite open. I'd love to revisit them with a television camera. I think they're magic. Their stories are fantastic. Some people said, I've got all these ideas coming in.
I think it's just a question of sort of redefining or revisiting the definition of culture capital. Because what is emerging is personality, psychological capitalism.
It's actually been... Well, it's been defined as psychological capital, but My difficulty is I don't have a background in that area. Someone else has called that immigrant entrepreneurship psychological capital. But you're saying, well, where do you get that from? That might be what you end up with. Is that transmitted? I can't claim that immediately.
You presumably read quite a few books on entrepreneurship and stuff like that, and you're not empowered by it. But one of the people that we had here was John Thompson, and
Thompson and Bolton.
Bolton and Thompson, and he has quite a different take on the makeup of entrepreneurs than the traditional American everybody can do the rags to riches story. And John Thompson's approach is based on the Gallup approach of talent, temperament, and technique. That there are certain mental and emotional habits of mind which are best fitted to different sorts of roles and jobs. And Bolton and Thompson has delved into this, particularly with respect to entrepreneurs. So I can point you to this material, and it's something I'm using a lot with my first year students in innovation and entrepreneurship, helping them understand what their talents are and how they should build them, and to what extent they have some or all or none of the talent associated with an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial team. And I help them build entrepreneurial teams with that. But so that's one thing, the sort of strength-based approach, which very much builds on a huge Gallup studies over about 20 years on the strengths and talents-based approach. But there's also another model that you might find useful with Bolton and Thompson. It's that figure 1 or figure 2 in their book, which is their entrepreneurial process
model.
Right.
It began as the centipede, but I'm working with sociologists, so I had to lose it. But it does. It means ultimately I'm hoping to complete the research and everything. Then I'm hoping to mine it in terms of those dimensions.
Yeah.
But it actually guided, and in fact it actually guided me at the beginning of all of those things, and it was central to how I tried to cope with the different fields around it because of the plethora, the social capital, the entrepreneur, immigrant entrepreneur, human capital. It was big. Yeah. So thank you for that. It wasn't the middle.
Do you have a related question? Do you have a range of people from different cultures and countries? And if you do, does that complicate what you're finding?
It wasn't as there are Korean, Chinese, US, and South African, and GB, Great Britain. So a range, but and not reflective proportionately to the numbers in those countries. But what I'm really excited about is that I think, you have to, the sample is so small, you have to be careful, but I think they got way more similar together, characteristics of entrepreneurs than this previously, I think, laboured ethnic entrepreneurs. I see more in common with a model, and then I'm not sort of supposed to use models in my sociology before, but with an entrepreneurial model generally, which is coming back to that process model, surrounded by, I think there are differences for women, Maori, immigrants, and I think they all go together on the one. It really comes back, I'm feeling, to the characteristics, and I tried to. Characteristics were not part of what I was looking for, but I can't ignore and the fact that those characteristics are part of whatever culture. Most of these people, I have to add, were older. Over 50 would be my guess. I didn't ask about ages, but ages came out as a reason, so they had a
observation rather than a question. You spoke about various characteristics which are sort of generalized in the types of people you looked at, and you haven't considered that culture is also, the cultural capital is also there And I see you mentioned a couple of names, and there was no Indian, perhaps in your research that you know, entrepreneurs. But some of the people who come here, I'm talking as an immigrant who knows other Indian immigrants, who have come from a family that are business-oriented families, and that would be a very interesting.
And that's part of the literature. That is
Yeah.
part of entrepreneurial literature.
The projects and really, you know, went out into the community. I was just interested in finding out how many of those whether any of those at all were located in Auckland and Wellington.
3 in Auckland and 2 in Wellington.
3 in Auckland and 2 in
Of the people who volunteered, remember?
Yes.
So they are a group who volunteer. We have to, the positivity of that. Cass, did you have a question? Or
Is it class in this room?
The themes that they emerge from the interviews.
Yes, I've looked at the early stage. I'm in the middle stage. I mean, I've gone through it once already, but now once sort of I'm going into it more deeply. The other thing is that the government has been running a longitudinal, and they just hold their documentations, their results so tightly. If I wanted them, I have to pay, which seems, I mean, what's the point of having results? And I'm hoping that because they're longitudinal, because they're long-term business visa, there are so few people, they are very reluctant to release that information for fear of identifying them. I'm just frustrated because all the work that I look at from the Department of Labour, they roll everyone together, the investors, the skilled immigrants, and these people to me have quite different behaviour. Absolutely different behaviour, and it's meaningless to roll the whole lot together, and I just get very frustrated because it's, contradictory. So anyway, that's it. So I appreciate you having the patience to listen.
Well, thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you.